Welcome in to week 12 of Wall Street. We're doing buys. These will be our last buys of the season as the other half of fantasy leagues this week have their trade deadlines. So the other half were last week. Sorry for those people. We're going to be absolutely no help to you tonight. But we got the professor here with some guys that you want to have on your roster through the rest of the season. Professor, give us those three guys.
Hey Kyle, good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
Let's kind of jump right into. It's hard to believe we're that time of the season, but we're going into week 12. The fantasy trade deadline for some leagues has already passed, and others, this is it. So all eyes now should be focused and fixed on the fantasy playoffs. Of course, we're still trying to make sure we get there. You've got to get to the playoffs in order to win your championship. But you've really got to at now is the time. The window is closing, and so as you're looking for guys to buy, looking for guys to sell, you've really now got to start to factor in what these schedules look like, both remaining rest of season and in particular the fantasy playoffs. And so a guy that I have really, one of the guys at the top of the list, I had a bunch of guys this week, but I really wanted to narrow down on three in particular. And the first one is Garrett Wilson with the New York Jets. He's put in for a couple of reasons. One, he's put together a couple of games here that have not been very good. This last week against the Colts, I'm looking at the stat line now, 4 catches for 18 yards. Man, that sucks.
That's tough.
Tough. Here's the good news. The good news is he still led the team in targets. He still had 8 targets on the game. The great news is that he's got a fantastic schedule remaining. In particular, the fantasy playoffs. During the playoffs, he's going to be going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's going to be going up against the Rams and the Buffalo Bills. So just 3 fantastic matchups that you'll have in particular for that playoff stretch. And look, he's not a bad guy to own, period. I mean, he does dominate the target share. He is an elite receiver. And so if this is a guy you can make a move now while he's put together a couple of poor outings, this is a time for me to try and grab a guy like Garrett Wilson, have him on my roster for the playoff push and for the playoff matchups.
Yeah, 100%. I really don't have much to add to that. You pretty much hit everything right on the head there. But no, I totally agree with you. A couple of down games presents a small window, whereas sometimes when you're going after guys of this caliber, you don't necessarily get those windows. So, yeah, I agree with you. Let's go hard for Garrett Wilson. All right.
Yeah, go hard for Garrett Wilson. We need a couple other guys to go hard for. Another guy that I don't necessarily need to even tell you to go hard for, one of, if not the best receiver in the league, and that's Justin Jefferson with the Vikings. Again, just like I was saying with Garrett Wilson, maybe not to the same extent, but has not necessarily put up some of those elite numbers that you would expect or at least hope to get from a Justin Jefferson. He did have 6 catches for 81 yards, so not a bad stat line. But I think because he isn't necessarily kind of finishing in the top 3, top 4, top 5 receivers on the week, opens up a little bit of a buying opportunity for him. And this is a guy who, for the fantasy playoffs, is going up against just a tremendous kind of remaining schedule. We're going to be looking at pulling up his schedule here. We're going to be looking at Seattle, Green Bay. They've got Detroit. That's at the end of the season. But, between now and that Green Bay game, Arizona, Atlanta, against Seattle and Green Bay. So some really strong matchups. And I expect him to be a guy that's going to help put you over the top for the kind of the playoff push and hopefully your championship matchup.
Yeah, JJ is one of those that typically is pretty matchup proof anyways. So if you take
Yeah.
level of skill and throw in, cakewalk matchups, like he's going to carry you in the playoffs. So 100%, that's somebody I want on my team.
Yeah, and again, just like I was saying with Garrett Wilson, he dominates the target share in his offense, over 30%. He's top 5 in air yards. So there are a lot of things really to love about Justin Jefferson. If you've got an owner who maybe is willing to part with him, you're gonna have to pay for a guy like Jefferson, but he's a guy I'd be willing to pay the price to get.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, and last but not least,
I'll give you another receiver. There are lots of receivers I really like. Last receiver, another stud guy who hasn't necessarily produced in the past few weeks, but is commanding over 30% of the target share in this offense. Is an elite receiver, has a great quarterback, and that's AJ Brown. It was a team with Saquon that really likes to run the football, and Saquon has looked tremendous. But there's an opportunity here, I think, to grab AJ Brown. You might be able to get him actually a little bit undervalued. And down the stretch here, down for the rest of the season in the fantasy playoffs, he's a guy who also just has an incredible schedule. We're looking at the Rams in Baltimore the next couple of weeks. He's got Carolina in week 14. And then he has Washington and Dallas in week 16 and 17. So he does go up against Pitt in 15, but this more of a neutral matchup. But I love his schedule rest of the season. He's a guy that, if I can get on my roster, don't have to pay the premium price to get him. He's a guy that I'm going to try and get if I can.
Yeah, again, a top 5 receiver that you can get in a small window of opportunity here. And I mean, God, those are some of the softest matchups in the league he has during the playoffs. And you mentioned
100%.
that one against Pitt, but Pitt's proven lately, like they're not shut down as of late. People have been throwing on them a little bit more than they were maybe earlier in the season. So I'm not as afraid of that matchup now as I was in the first half of the season.
Another nice thing with that matchup is it's at home.
Yeah, that helps.
It's different playing at Pitt than playing in Philly. So
you're never going to get Kansas City home cooking, but a little bit never hurt, right?
Why not? Why not? I just think these are 3 guys that you can't go wrong. The matchups are right. Schedules look fantastic. Elite players, target shares there. Like everything is there to kind of give you the best chance of putting guys with high upside on your roster. That could be, they could win you a week. They can win you the league.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate one more time too. Like a lot of people are going to see this list and go, "Well, duh, of course you want those guys on your team." But the point here is these are guys you want no matter what. Pay whatever these guys are wanting for these players. Get them on your team so they can carry you to the promised land. Right?
Absolutely. In particular, Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's going to go for premium. And you and I have talked many times about various different types of trades, and you're great at constructing trades as well. And so, it's hard to kind of do this in a vacuum. A lot of it depends on your roster, where you maybe have some depth, where you can afford to move some players. But the point is that if you can put something together to get some of these guys, I would be looking at ways to do that.
100%. All right, that's the professor with his Christmas tree up already before Thanksgiving and putting pearls of wisdom underneath. Putting pearls of wisdom underneath it, right? Just passing those out for Christmas this year. All right, my guy. I appreciate it. Everybody, good luck at the trade deadline. Good luck in week 12 and the rest of the season.
Thanks, Kyle.